Hello and welcome to the Daily Signal. Let's see what the conservatives are up to today. So today we're going back to our roots, and we are in fact going to do the Daily Signal, Heritage Foundation's horrible newsletter. We are going to do their podcast, which I've never done before, and I'm going to do the one thing you're not supposed to do as a liberal: criticize a black woman.
What environmental justice is doing to black people now is creating a new Jim Crow.
So the podcast is entitled How Biden's Energy Policies Harm African Americans by Virginia Allen. I've chosen this video, first of all, because it's astoundingly bad with the facts, but also because this is a really good example of a trick that conservatives like to do, which is essentially to weaponize their idea of liberal identity politics against liberals. And as a leftist, it's just simply not going to work here. Allow me to explain. Basically what they do is they will find a black person who believes something that they like. And then they get that black person to stand up and say, as a black person, this is what I believe. And then they go, you cannot criticize this person because it would be racist of you, because that's what they think identity politics are. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of liberals seem to think identity politics are, and an unfortunate number of leftists seem to also. If a black person comes up to me and tells me about their experience of being black in America or anywhere, I have nothing to say. I do not know what that is like. I will never know what that is like. I look like this. And I also won't know what a specific community needs. If I have not lived there, then I need to listen to people's lived experiences and learn about what they need to make life good. However, we're all humans. Black people are human, which means they don't know everything, just like white humans don't know everything. Like nobody knows everything. And it is absurd the way that we shy away from saying that. It assumes that black people are a monolith, which they aren't. And things often devolve, and I've seen this happen, into basically, I found a black person who agrees with me, and my black person trumps your black person. And that is a gross game to play. That is actually incredibly racist. That is just using people for their identity. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's gross. The only way that the tricks we're going to see here work is if liberals fall into that trap. So we're going to examine that trap today. And we're going to do it by listening to the most god-awful podcast on climate change that I've ever personally heard. So let's get started.
Well, gas prices are at record highs across the country. And, these high energy costs, they are affecting all Americans, but they're affecting some people more than others. And so here with us to talk about that is Donna Jackson. She's the Director of Membership Development for Project 21 at the National Center for Public Policy Research, which is the nation's largest Black conservative think tank. Donna, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
All right, so let's start with this. Who exactly is Donna Jackson? Because they just called her the Director of Membership Development, which does not, to me, sound like a climate change thing. That sounds like something else. I don't know what a Director of Membership is. I am a degenerate, and I do not work for the corporate world. I have no idea what that is. So I looked it up, and according to Google, the position is responsible for basically maintaining membership of some kind of club. So basically, their goal is to recruit people to be members of whatever. In this case, the think tank that she works for. Now, clearly membership growth is her thing, which is in no way related to climate science in the slightest goddamn bit at all. So let's learn a little bit more about her background. She is a seasoned accountant, earned a Bachelor of Accountancy. Prior to her career in accounting, Donna was a political operative in the state of Arkansas. So basically what we have here is somebody who is good at accounting, so money, and politics. So she's actually a great fit for Director of Membership Development, assuming that is getting donors, because she's good at playing the political game and she understands money and accounting. And so this makes sense. She's in a real good role here for her skill set. What does any of this have to do with climate science? I would expect if somebody went on a radio program with this background that they would be talking about how to gain members to something. And in fact, that is exactly what she's doing. She is pitching her organization and showing basically the product that they supply, which is a black voice saying something that white conservatives enjoy hearing. And we'll come back to the National Center for Public Policy Research to see what else they believe as this podcast progresses. So let's get back to it.
Well, so as of Monday, our average on gas prices, according to the AAA, were $4.89 a gallon. We're all feeling these effects. President Biden right now, he's blaming Russia. He's blaming these high gas prices on oil companies. Is this accurate? Who's really at fault here?
Oh, no. I mean, Biden owns this. I love it when he's always blaming Putin. Okay, let's start off. He created a perfect storm. So there was this disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, where the focus was on understanding white rage and pronouns, where they had more meetings about that than actually the Afghanistan pullout.
What? Okay, I don't know what that means. Biden was more worried about white rage and pronouns than withdrawing from Afghanistan. That is a buzzword salad that makes no goddamn sense.
So what happened? It was disasters, and it encouraged Putin to invade.
Is her complaint that we were too worried about pronouns to withdraw from Afghanistan? Like General Milley was like, I sure would love to organize a strategic withdrawal from Afghanistan, but I'm just, my schedule is just packed with pronouns and being angry as a white person. Like, what the hell is white rage? What does it mean? I'll tell you, these are buzzwords. She's using political buzzwords that are designed to ping the fucking amygdala of the people watching this who are already primed to just believe that those words are the cause of everything bad. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't have to, I guess, because just what does it mean?
So he owns that because of the way he handled the pullout. Now add that to his war on domestic energy. Now he said when he was running that he was going to end the fossil fuel industry. Now, the left and the Biden administration have been very strategic in the way they've attacked the fossil fuel gas industry. At every step, they block pipelines. There's litigations with permits. There's slow-rolling environmental analysis that they need to get drilling, to get pipelines.
Let's fact check that, shall we? So the actual fact is that Biden approved actually quite a lot of drilling. In fact, he approved 34% more permits to drill than Trump did in his first year. Now, to be fair, those numbers have fallen off, and it's unclear why that is. It sounds a little bit like Biden is actually pressuring the oil companies to drill more, like, I'm not going to give you permission to drill on more land, when in fact you aren't drilling on the land that you have, which gets us to another point, which is, are the oil companies suffering from lack of land to drill? And the answer is no. Biden pointed out that the oil industry has 9,000 permits to drill in places where they are not drilling. Now, Poynter fact checks this, and this is not unusual for any administration. Lots of administrations have unused permits, and there are a variety of reasons why oil companies don't drill, and some of them are to keep the price high. Artificially, and some of it is, as described in this article, a mind game, so that competitors don't know how much oil you have. And I believe there are some tax reasons if you look through this, where if you start drilling, you have to add it as an asset, and if you don't, the tax situation is different. Links in the description if you want to look at it. The reason that gas prices are so absolutely astronomically high right now, there's a few reasons, right? One of them is that during COVID, gas prices fell through the floor. Do you remember when oil barrels were going for negative money? Like, oil barrels were worth less than $0 at the height of, like, the first wave of the pandemic in May. Look, it's like everything else. The supply chain, havoc hath been wreaked. And also, there is the Russia situation. Counting Russia out is ridiculous.
And then they've also signaled the financial industry that if anybody invests in the industry, then they were going to target them.
What does she mean by target? Like, target in what way? Are we going to cancel the banks? Are we canceling them on Twitter? Is that how we're targeting them? Like, I don't think that's how it works. I'm going to need to know more about the ways that we're targeting people.
So you got the banks, the financial institutions afraid to invest because this is a long haul. You don't just get up and drill today and then have everything you need. So they've attacked any industry that invests. Now with this SEC regulation, they're trying to normalize climate change.
What the hell does it mean to normalize climate change? I feel like the whole thing we're doing is trying to not do that. I guess what she probably means is normalize climate change discourse, like the idea that it's real and that we should maybe do something about it. But notice that there's no attack on, like, there's no explanation of, like, why that's not the case. There's no rationale for, look at the science because climate change isn't real, because there isn't one. Basically what she's doing is she's explaining the financial impacts as she sees them, which, as we've already discussed, are, less true than one might like, her analysis and her facts that she's pulling out here. But she's not really interested in climate change. It is a given in this video that climate change is false. We don't need to justify that stance because we've already decided that that's true. So let's continue.
And understand, because I've worked in the accounting industry for a long time, financial institutions, investors use the financial statements to determine whether they want to invest in the industry. So if you have an industry that looks like fake numbers, I'm going to say they're fake numbers, but looks worse than it should using these climate change disclosures, then they're not going to invest their money. So in every aspect, you got bureaucrats from the EPA, you got the SEC, you have everybody targeting, and then you have the president that gives an expectation that says, I'm going to end your industry in 8 years. So why, even if I was a worker, why would I devote my life to working in an industry or a career that I know is going to end in less than 8 years? I can't guarantee a house or a mortgage. I can't determine that I'm going to be able to take care of my kids and put them through college.
What world do you live in where any job has that these days? Are we back in the 50s where we all worked for the same company for 50 years and, like, we get our pension and get to retire? Why would you go into that industry? I don't know, because it pays a lot of money right now. I don't think that worker shortage is the problem. It's COVID, which she's not talking about, and then a little bit of what she is talking about. But again, no mention about whether it's a good thing that we're sunsetting oil and gas. It's just assumed that it's good. So let's keep going.
So in every aspect of this issue, this president has signaled that his expectation is that he's going to end the fossil fuel industry.
I wish.
He has a war on gas, and he's trying to force people into electricity, something that people don't want.
Okay, look, she's going to say that a few times, and I don't know what she's talking about. Like, I assume that she means, like, when she says forcing people into electricity, she means, like, renewable energy. Like, we're generating electricity. I'm not trying to be pedantic here, but, like, it is a little bit important. Like, the whole conversation is about how we generate electricity. No one's forcing anyone onto electricity. Like, is she talking about electric cars? Is that what this is about? Like, we're forcing people to drive electric cars and get away from gas cars, and that's what's doing it? But, like, this doesn't feel to me like an expert. Again, this is an inexpert witness. Let's keep hearing what she has to say.
I want to really, explain about how this parallels to what they've always did to African Americans, because they're doing to the American people what they've done to African Americans for decades.
All right, so interesting thing about this, like, we're about to get into the good part, right? We finally arrived at the part that I find the most interesting. But notice that even while doing identity politics, the threat is we're going to start treating white people like black people. Like, if you don't listen to us and you keep electing these Democrats, you know what? You all are going to end up exactly like black people in America. And that, to me, is an interesting statement. Like, just watch out for that continuing as we move forward into what I think is the best part of this video.
Yeah, if you would get into that a little
because
bit, explain these
they have this, the left creates this agenda that black people never asked for, and then they tell them to fall in line and do what they're told. That's the same thing they're doing with this fossil fuel industry. They decided that everybody should use electricity. And so they have this war on fossil fuel, and so they're going to force the fossil fuel industry into bankruptcy and then force the American people into vehicles, into a energy source a Green New Deal energy source that they didn't ask for.
So according to this construct, the left isn't listening to black voices. And this is a leftist talking point, the idea that we need to listen to black voices more. And it's true. The reason this works is because, broadly speaking, it's true that we do not listen to black voices enough. It is, broadly speaking, correct that we often force things onto black communities that do not help them. But what she's doing is co-opting that language and using it to advance her agenda, specifically the fossil fuel agenda. And this only works because the liberals have agreed, essentially, to this bargain where we'll hand-wring about listening to Black people, and we'll make Juneteenth a holiday, and we will get more Black female CEOs. We got a vice president who's a Black woman, and then we'll call it a day and not actually address any of the real issues that are happening here. And she's taking advantage of that fact to basically bastardize the language of identity politics to advocate for something where it doesn't even fit. She's basically taking the structure of real arguments and then applying it to her fake-ass bullshit. So let's keep watching her do that.
And they expect everybody to fall in line. Now, why do they use environmental justice? Because I can blackmail you. For Black people, and they've been very good at the CRT infusing this into it. For Black people, they've already given this narrative that we're too stupid, too dumb, too ignorant to know what's best for us. So they're the ones that's telling everybody what we need.
What the hell does CRT have to do with environmentalism? Again, this is just like buzzwords, like they're throwing it out. They've been real good with the CRT by brainwashing people to believe that Black people are too dumb to know what they want in the energy field. Like that's just, like, what do you say to that except that, like, what? And the conservative rebuttal to what I just said is, are you calling this Black woman stupid? No, I'm calling her very smart. She is expertly manipulating her audience, giving them exactly what she wants. She might not know a goddamn thing about environmental policy. I mean, she may have no interest in the fact, but there's nothing wrong with her brain. She's very smart. Unfortunately, she's just doing really bad shit.
You know, I don't agree with Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson or some of those guys.
Oh, okay, so it is cool if we disagree with Black people, just, the ones that you don't like.
But on this issue, even they said that Black people shouldn't bear the burden of these high green energy deals that's burdening to the African American community.
Now we're getting into the truth of the matter. She's right. She's absolutely right. Black people should not have to bear the cost of these Green New Deal energy plans. And this is where we're getting into liberal points of failure that these conservative fossil fuel-backed think tanks are able to exploit. Because it's true that these gas prices are falling disproportionately on poor people. And by poor people, in this country, we mean Black people, because race and class are like this in America. Intersectionalism really sucks ass a lot of the time. So, she's right about that. But then she's going to use it, well, you'll see.
Now, people like me, that's a Black conservative, they would say, oh, she's just, suffering from multiracial whiteness, or she's just, being used.
No. Okay, there are some people who would say that shit, and I just want to be very clear, that is not what's happening here. I am not saying that she's, selling out her race. I don't care about any of that shit. That shit's dumb. In no way is she a puppet of anybody. She has her own reasons for doing this. My guess would be cash. Maybe she really believes it. I don't really care why she's doing it. But no, my rebuttal has nothing to do with her race. My rebuttal has to do with the fact that she doesn't know or care what the fuck she is talking about. Let's continue.
But even them, they said they're taking dark money because they resent African Americans when they say the impact of pollution or dirty air, as they want to say, poverty has done more harm than any pollutant to any African American.
Yep. Ms. Jackson here is absolutely correct that poverty has done more harm, as of now, to Black people than environmental problems. Now, give it 20 years and we'll have another conversation because things are not going well out there. So what is your solution for poverty? Exactly. Do you care about poverty only when it benefits the fossil fuel industry? Or do you care about alleviating poverty all the time? Let's look at her think tank. What are their policies on poverty alleviation? So we got the National Center for Public Policy Research right here. And you can read this, link in the description, etc. Environmental policy occupies a huge amount of real estate right off the bat. These are a list of things that they've accomplished, which is essentially an advertisement to donors. Regulatory reform, fiscal policy, healthcare, let's see here. So entitlement reform, usually code for cutting service. Here, they're advocating against expanding public role in healthcare. I don't know. Look, there's a whole conservative argument that if we privatize healthcare completely, it'll get rid of a lot of the red tape and everything will be super good and we'll all be able to afford healthcare better. I don't personally think that's true. We don't have time to have that debate here. I'm not getting a real good vibe on the poverty. So then we got government accountability, national defense, national sovereignty, new leaders for Black America, which is like we literally just have Black people who will come on your radio show to tell you what you want to hear, which is what Ms. Jackson's doing here. There is no poverty focus here. There is a brief mention of some reforms that, in my opinion, will make the condition of poor people worse, but they don't care. They don't care about poverty. They are not coming at this from a poverty reduction standpoint. They're coming at this from a fossil fuel standpoint and using liberal talking points against them, and it's very easy to dismantle by simply going, that woman is full of shit, and then when they say, are you saying that because she's Black? You say, no, I'm saying it because she's full of shit. Let's continue.
But they use that environmental justice to push their issues through, because any American that says, you know what, I think that this is overhyped. I don't really want to buy these vehicles. I don't think that I want all of my energy sources to come from one source. They'll say, well, you're a racist. You're a white supremacist. You're an extremist. And so they use these kind of policies. They use these kind of environmental justice to blackmail the people into an agenda that they don't want.
This is what they imagine the arguments are. Maybe in weird corners of Twitter, people really do just be like, if you don't agree with me, you're racist. And that's real obnoxious when that happens. And I don't like it when that happens. But like the vast majority of the world that isn't like terminally online do not operate in that way. And anyone who does is not a serious person. The planet is undergoing pretty severe climate change that's already having some pretty serious geopolitical effects. It's kind of looking like in the next couple years, climate change is going to drastically decrease the amount of food that can be grown around the world, and that combined with Russia, sorry to blame everything on Putin, is going to drive a huge wave of migrants into Europe. We're going to have a lot of xenophobia coming out of that. It's not good when people have to leave their homes to go somewhere else because they can't eat. I'm getting really sidetracked here, but my point is that no, like there's a lot of arguments for switching to green energy sources that aren't you're racist, and it's ridiculous to frame it that way. It's absolutely dumb. Like this, just a fantasy of what the left would argue about, because they've never actually talked to a leftist in their lives. They just like to imagine what things would be like based on like the Twitter screenshots that their grandmother sent them. And it's just, no, that's not the case. Stop it.
Well, and I think my guess is that a common response we might hear from the left if they heard you say something like this is, there's going to be a little bit more pain initially and a little more hurt as we move away from dependence on fossil fuels. But ultimately, environmental justice and shifting to electric and shifting to solar, that will ultimately help minority populations. What would be your response to that argument?
Listen, what environmental justice is doing to Black people now is creating a new Jim Crow. If you look at California and places that they've been advanced in adopting environmental justice policies, they're also the most racist. I'm going to give you an example. In California, they needed 100 to 200,000 units in order to have enough housing for individuals, and it wouldn't encamp everybody in there, but just to have enough housing, affordable housing for people. Using environmental climate change policies, they were only able to get 1,824.
So, you may remember not 30 seconds ago when we briefly looked at the agenda of the think tank that Ms. Jackson works for. Do you remember seeing a single thing about housing justice on there? Or do you just remember some stuff about cutting entitlement programs? Is that... Because she doesn't care about housing justice at all. You may be wondering, is she going to link this to environmental policy? I will give you a spoiler alert. In no way does she justify that claim. She's just like, this bad thing that liberals would care about is because of environmental policies. Case closed. And before we even get into the truth of that claim, which we're going to do in a second, One of the things that James O'Keefe of Project Veritas, an organization that I follow pretty closely, has written about in several of his books is Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. And you wouldn't necessarily expect conservatives to be into Alinsky, and they're not into his politics, but they really like his rules. Breitbart, Andrew Breitbart, huge fan of his rules. And one of the rules is force your opponent to play by their own rules. And that is essentially what they're doing here. They are using the language of identity politics as they understand it to advance their own ends. It speaks to a sort of weird poverty of ideas on the right, where they critique critical race theory and in fact never shut the fuck up about it. But ultimately what they do is steal it, their bastardized understanding of it, and then deploy it. And by doing that, essentially grant it power. They're granting the baseline assumptions by using it. So, like, what of two interpretations is possible here? Either critical race theory, as they understand it, makes some very powerful points and we should listen to it because look at how they're being used here. Obviously, there's some truth to them. Or critical race theory, as they understand it, is complete horseshit, and what she is doing is also horseshit. You can't have it both ways. Either you need to listen to critical race theory, or you need to ignore this woman. You get to decide which one. Allow me to help you make the decision. You may recall the statistic that she just listed. Let's hear it again.
In California, they needed 100 to 200,000 units in order to have enough housing for individuals, and it wouldn't encamp everybody in there, but just to have enough housing, affordable housing for people. Using environmental climate change policies, they were only able to get 1,824.
Is that true? Is that true? I had to look very, very hard to find this statistic. I looked everywhere, and at first what I found was stories like this one. Like, Governor Newsom has funded 10,000 new homeless housing units. That's a thing that's happened. They've already provided temporary shelter for 50,000 Californians. Another 8,000 have secured permanent housing. 8,000 being a much higher number than the one that she threw out. After doing a tremendously targeted search, I came up with environmentalprogress.org. In this really long analysis of California housing, it says Governor Brown last September signed new housing legislation to raise $250 million per year to subsidize housing. That $250 million would be enough to subsidize just 1,824 units in total, about 92,000 short of what is needed. Now hold the fuck on. A couple things about this. It's 9,200 short, so that's under 100,000 houses needed. Why is the number so much lower than the 200,000 that she threw out? It's 9,200 short, so that's under 100,000 houses needed, according to this article. Also, Governor Jerry Brown, turns out, if you look at the citations that she uses, all of them are from 2016 or 2017. So she is using data that is 5 years out of date when other data is readily available, and when she clearly found that 200,000 statistic somewhere, that's a much more recent estimate of exactly how much housing we do need. So she is aware of what she's doing. And then that doesn't even get into the fact that, like, she doesn't explain how housing is a black issue. Like, there's an explanation for that, right? Like, you ask an anti-racist activist, they'll explain why it's a racial issue. But she's not going to, because that's the critical race theory that she rails against. So again, I ask you, is it valid or is she full of shit? Both of them can't be true at the same time. And either way, it ends with her just being someone you don't need to listen to.
It's a huge difference between 200,000 units and 1,800 units. The pain points, what they've decided is that Black people are disposable, that your life doesn't matter, because they are actually pushing people into poverty. When you have someone that's spending more than 30% of their income for gasoline, and they're making choices between whether their kids can have food to eat, or medicine, or pay their energy bills, electricity, gasoline, then that is not a pain point. That's genocide.
The word genocide is obviously a co-opting of leftist language to talk about various things that have happened in this country. You know, the idea that Black lives don't matter is something that she's lifting directly from the BLM logic. She's again, weaponizing the words of the left against them in the most cynical way possible. However, she's correct about something. It is incredibly unfair to ask somebody to pay 30% of their salary towards gas. Now, I'm not going to fact check that number. Something tells me it's not right. I don't actually care. The point is that people are in fact hurting horribly with these gas prices. Like, it's really easy for New York City liberals to be like, well, maybe they should just, like, they should walk more, they shouldn't drive. And these people have never left New York City in their goddamn life. Because once you get outside the borders of like an urban center, you can't walk everywhere. You can't walk to the store. I grew up in a place where you had to drive half an hour one way to get milk. These talking points would not have power if the liberal establishment wasn't failing so spectacularly to address the very real needs of American citizens. If the plan really is just suffer through it with a smile until we get to green energy, yeah, that's a real bad plan, actually. Like, it's not fair to do that to people. It does fall disproportionately on the poor. It does fall disproportionately on rural people. She's not wrong. The best way to dispute her points would just be to have a society that fucking functions. People who say we need to tack to centrism, we need to not do radical things, we need to not rock the boat, not pass too many incentives, not ask for too much, are missing the point, because none of these arguments work if people aren't desperately poor and struggling. And she's at least talking about it. She's not dismissing it. She's not laughing from her fucking ivory tower. She's acknowledging that people are hurting, and that's why they're winning. You know? And it's heartbreaking to me because she doesn't have any solutions. She doesn't care about people who are poor any more than the libs in their ivory tower really care about people who are poor. She's not going to solve poverty. If she really believes poverty is a genocide, then you would expect her to make that a priority in her life. She is not. Her organization does not give a shit about poverty, and nothing that she is proposing, which we'll get to in a second, is going to alleviate that poverty. So she's cynically deploying this against people who are truly hurting because, honestly, just having someone acknowledge that it's bullshit and that the bullshit is coming from the establishment that pretends to help you is enough for a lot of people to go over to the conservative side. Fix your shit, America.
They're destroying Black community. They're destroying Black businesses. In California, they forced every new building to have electricity instead of gas. The Black Chamber of Commerce is the one that came out. And the Latino Chamber of Commerce are the ones that came out and say, listen, this is hurting minorities.
All right, so right there, you could give her the benefit of the doubt earlier about like from gas to electric, where maybe she's talking about like electric cars or whatever. But right there, she's talking about buildings going over from gas to electric. And again, I literally don't know what she's talking about. If I had an expert on my show who couldn't even be precise about what California is doing and exactly what kind of renewable energy they're requiring. Like, these are all things that I would like to know. And her explanation that they're forcing them to be on electricity instead of gas literally makes no sense. I don't understand what she's talking about. Let's continue.
The worst, because you have small businesses that can't afford the fees, can't afford the taxes, can't afford the cost of these new regulations. In fact, if you look at a small business, which minority businesses generally fall into, they pay 4 times the cost of that big businesses pay for these rules. They usually can't withstand the expenses involved in being able to comply with these environmental regulations. So they're forced out of business. During a pandemic, 40% of Black businesses went under.
Again, she's sitting on a very real point, which is that big corporations are usually insulated from things, and small businesses and regular people are the ones who have to bear the brunt of things. And that is a failure of liberalism and why we all need leftism.
So to understand the volatility that they already face, to pile on more regulations that they can't afford, plus the fact that the amount of paperwork that you have to do, the outside counsel that you have to get, actually increases that barrier and is pushing people not only out into poverty, but out of business, and is creating those larger wealth gap. That's not a pain point.
Yeah.
That's actually deciding who gets to live and who doesn't, because the cost of living expenses are too great. And if you tell me a pain point is I have to watch the pain of my child who can't eat, that's not an inconvenience. That's cruelty.
Yeah. Again, so there might be more factors than fossil fuels and the Green New Deal going into the fact that Americans are hungry, and I would just love to see you actually address them instead of cynically using starving people to advance your fossil fuel agenda. Anyway, what's your solution?
Yeah. So then let's talk about solutions. Because what you're saying is that, what the Biden administration is doing right now isn't working. So then how can we move forward in such a way where we are lifting everyone up through our energy policy in America?
Well, the first thing you do is you create a pro-energy policy, climate change policy. If you signal to an industry that we're not going to destroy you, maybe they'll want to create more. The other thing is that we should be doing an economic impact study of climate change policies that we adopt so that we will see if the policies themselves are creating more hardship than the harm that is supposed to save us from, then we shouldn't be adopting these policies.
Once again, we have an example of somebody proposing a bad solution to a real problem, which is that there's a lot of poverty in urban areas. Now, is that because of liberals? Is that, is that something that she can solve? Signs point to no. Should there be economic hardship studies done so that we can better distribute the pain of switching off of fossil fuels for more renewable energy? Yeah, that does seem like a good idea, as long as it's not used for a cudgel to continue to use fossil fuels until the planet gets to a point where we have massive geopolitical unrest due to climate change and changes in food production and food supply. But, whatever.
But they won't do that because they already know the net result. They already know that people are hurting. But they had already decided long ago, because every black city in America that you see in poverty has been run by liberals for 70 years. They've already decided that we don't matter. And now what they've done is realize that that experiment worked, and they're imposing it on all the American people today.
There's this idea in here, two things that the conservatives really like to hammer home. One, they think you're stupid, and two, they're doing it on purpose. They're hurting you on purpose, and they're going to keep hurting you. We get some notes of you're going to be in the bad position like black people are if you allow them to do this. Like, don't let the liberals get your way or you'll become the people who are oppressed. That's not actually the language of lifting people out of oppression. That's the language of basically trying to keep people compliant by having a group of people that you oppress, and then you can point at them and be like, well, it could be worse, you could be like them. Is that what you want? You better fall the fucking line. All right, look, the video continues for a while, and you're welcome to read it, but I feel like we've hit all the salient points. Don't fall into the trap of not being willing to critique someone because of their race. Don't fall into the trap of surrendering ground like this. Do the leftist thing. Care about people who are suffering, because there are a lot of people out there who are real mad. And if you can't help them, they're going to listen to people who say they can. It doesn't matter that their solutions don't work. It doesn't matter that the problem with America isn't at all that we aren't drilling enough oil. It doesn't matter that those aren't the real problems that are making people hurt. What matters is that this person is offering a solution, and the libs are either making light of it from New York City or arguing to tack more to the center, to do less to help people. Look, this is the time of radical ideas. People are fed up. People can't live like this anymore. There's desperation in the air. Desperate times call for desperate measures. If there is ever a time to push real leftist reform, real programs that can really help lift people out of poverty, really hammer the housing issue, really address poverty, really help people afford their gas, really help us reach a point where we don't need to drive so much, where there is robust public transit. Get some goddamn trains, for God's sake. Europe has them. We can have them too. Work on the issues surrounding poverty. Work on lifting us out of this. Leftism has the answers, folks. But if we don't take that ground, people like Ms. Jackson here are going to take it from us. Anyway, that's the video. Hope you all enjoyed it. A big thank you to the patrons who make this possible. Y'all are amazing. A very special thanks to Carl Hanna, Stephen Swan, Sue Seifert, Jordan Jackson, Sandra Elliott, Shave Dice, Tina Kopolowski, Greg Bell, Frederick Keating, Just Trying to Support Shit, Alexandra Krigsman, Alexandria Schneider, Benjamin Tupper, Blaine Newport, Brent Schrock, Brian Covey, Clint Alter, Gentira Alert, Jennifer Johnson Berlis, Jules Taylor, Kristen Bott, Nathan Zilka, Paul, Polly, Soren, The Secret Chicken, Walker Brown, Caitlin Johnson, Michael Mataluni, Alex Glowowski, Ben Begley, Elizabeth Rassa, George Decaux, Ginger Nealon, Heather, Joey Reinsch, Lindsay, Marone, Marvelicious, Mr. Zarak, RR, Tedder, Tiffany Vu, Zeke, Raina Terror, and Julian. Y'all make this possible. Very much appreciate it. If you like this video, you know what to do. If you didn't, leave a comment telling me that I hate Black people, and everyone have a great day.